In the days of Lamech, who was now elderly and advanced in years, with dim eyesight that rendered him nearly blind, his son Tubal Cain led him into the field. In this field they unexpectedly encountered Cain, the son of Adam, infamous for murdering his brother Abel. As Cain approached, Lamech's failing vision prevented him from recognizing the visitor, and Tubal Cain, being young, also did not know who Cain was. "Someone is there," Tubal Cain stammered, uncertain about the approaching figure. They were at such a distance from Cain that neither could discern who or what was coming their way. Fearing the unknown entity, Tubal Cain urged his father to draw his bow. "It's better to be safe than sorry," Tubal advised. "You have the bow. Draw it now and eliminate the threat." Lamech confessed, "I cannot make out what it is," but he reluctantly loaded his bow nonetheless. Unknowingly, Lamech released arrow after arrow, believing he was targeting an animal or beast. As the arrows struck Cain's chest, he fell to the ground and died, just as the ground had opened to receive his brother Abel's blood years ago. The Lord had witnessed this event, and despite having forgiven Cain for his previous transgression, had decreed this manner of death for him. It was a death befitting his own wickedness, as he had once murdered his brother Abel. After Cain's death, Lamech and Tubal Cain approached the fallen figure to investigate. When they realized they had killed Cain, they were filled with grief and remorse. Tubal tried to explain, "I thought it was an animal or a threat," but Lamech could not be consoled. "You fool," Lamech cursed. "You have made me a murderer of my own blood. If not for your insistence on loading my bow and shooting, I would not have taken a life, especially the life of our ancestor." Tubal pleaded with his father, "But, Father, I didn't mean to. I just—" "You foolish boy." Lamech, in a fit of rage, struck Tubal so hard that it killed him, making him a murderer once again. Upon returning home to his wives, Adah and Zillah, Lamech recounted the tragic events and confessed to killing their son Tubal. The wives were devastated and exclaimed, "How could you? You condemned our son for your own actions, turning yourself into a double murderer. You should have been the one to die in those fields." Lamech implored his wives to listen to his side of the story, but they refused to hear him. From that day onward, they despised Lamech for being not only a murderer, but a murderer of their son. The wives separated from him, refusing to listen to his pleas. Sometime later, Lamech approached his wives again, urging them to listen to his explanation. He said, "Hear my voice, attend to my words, for you have accused me of slaying a man with my arrows and a child with my fists. However, you must understand that I am old and my eyesight is failing due to my advanced age. I did these things unknowingly." The wives finally listened to Lamech's explanation and were convinced by his words. Encouraged by Adam's urging, they returned to him. However, they bore him no more children, as they knew God's anger was growing against humanity. The impending flood would soon cleanse the world of their wrongdoing, and a new beginning would follow. Analysis of Cain, Lamech, and Tubal Cain. The Book of Jasher provides a more detailed and nuanced portrayal of Cain compared to the limited description in the canonical Bible. Genesis only briefly mentions Cain's fate after killing Abel, whereas Jasher delves deeper into his story. In Jasher, it is suggested that God granted Cain some respite during his banishment, offering him a chance for a better life. However, Jasher also shows that Cain's murder of Abel does not go unpunished, as he is ultimately killed by another, creating a poetic end for the first murderer. This contrasts with the ambiguity of Cain's fate in Genesis. Lamech, a relatively minor character in the Bible, takes center stage in the Book of Jasher's narrative. Despite his old age and failing eyesight, Lamech demonstrates skill with a bow. When confronted by Cain, Lamech and Tubal Cain mistake him for an animal and inadvertently kill him with arrows. This event diverges significantly from the Genesis account, which does not mention Cain's death or Lamech's involvement. Jasher suggests that God's actions toward Cain may have been both merciful and vengeful, leaving room for interpretation. It also raises questions about the protection granted to Cain by God's mark, and whether Lamech's actions fell under the category of finding Cain. Lamech's reaction to the deaths of Cain and Tubal Cain is characterized by anger and a lack of remorse. In contrast, Cain mourned after killing Abel, and the Bible does not mention Lamech mourning Tubal Cain. This divergence in character highlights the growing wickedness of humanity, as described in the Book of Jasher. Lamech's dialogue with his wives in Jasher mirrors a similar conversation in Genesis, where he boasts of his potential vengeance surpassing God's protection for Cain. This arrogance reflects the moral decline of humanity in Jasher's narrative. Ultimately, Lamech and his descendants do not appear in subsequent passages of either Jasher or Genesis. This story in Jasher provides closure to Cain's narrative and highlights the tragic consequences of misplaced anger and a lack of remorse.
If you found this video enjoyable, please consider liking and sharing it. Additionally, subscribing to this channel will ensure that you receive more updates in the future. Thank you.